July 31st, 1977. Brooklyn, New York. A quiet street, late at night. Suddenly, sirens, police cars rush through the darkness. Red and blue lights flash across the buildings. Officers stop beside a parked car. The driver's door is open. Inside the car, two young people, both covered in blood. One is barely moving. The other is already dead. An officer shines his flashlight on the ground. 5 empty shell casings. Small, brass, cold. Detectives look at each other. They already know what this means, because New York has seen this before. The same weapon, the same style, the same sudden violence. A .44 caliber revolver. For nearly a year, the city had feared this moment. Every time those shell casings appeared, it meant only one thing. The killer had returned. The newspapers had already given him a name, the Son of Sam. And once again, the nightmare was not over. But who was he? A man who attacked strangers. A man who hunted couples, sitting in parked cars. A man who wrote strange letters to the police. Letters filled with rage. Letters filled with rage. Letters filled with madness. In one of those letters, the killer claimed something terrifying. He said he was not acting alone. He said the orders came from a demon speaking through a neighbor's dog. To many people, the claim sounded impossible. But the fear spreading through New York was very real, because no one knew who the killer was. He could be anyone. A stranger walking down the street, a man sitting beside you on the subway, or a quiet neighbor living just down the block. His real name was David Berkowitz. And for 1 year, he would terrorize an entire city. The mid-1970s were already difficult for New York City. The city was facing a financial crisis. Crime was rising. Entire neighborhoods felt unsafe after dark. Subway trains were covered in graffiti. Sirens echoed through the streets almost every night. But even in a city used to crime, something new was happening. A killer who attacked without warning. A killer who chose victims at random. Young people sitting in cars. Couples talking late at night. Ordinary moments, suddenly turning violent. At first, the shooting seemed unrelated. Different locations, different victims. But detectives soon noticed something disturbing. The same weapon, again, and again, and again, and again. A .44 caliber revolver. Someone was hunting people across New York, and no one knew who he was. Long before the newspapers printed the name Son of Sam, there was a quiet young man growing up in Brooklyn. His name was David Berkowitz. He was born on June 1st, 1953. Soon after birth, he was adopted. Nathan and Pearl Berkowitz raised him as their own son. They lived in a working-class neighborhood. From the outside, his childhood looked ordinary. But people who knew him later remembered something unusual. David was quiet, very quiet. He did not have many friends. Teachers, sometimes, described him as withdrawn, sometimes angry, sometimes lonely. But the most important moment in his early life came when he was 14 years old. His adoptive mother, Pearl Berkowitz, died from cancer. Her death affected him deeply. Neighbors later said he became more isolated after that, more distant, more withdrawn. Years later, many people would ask the same question. Were there warning signs, or did the darkness come later? July 29, 1976. The Bronx. A warm summer night. 2 young women sit inside a parked car. They are talking, laughing, planning the rest of the evening. Suddenly, a man approaches the car. No warning, no conversation, just a gun. The weapon flashes. Gunshots explode into the night. The attacker fires several times into the vehicle. One of the young women, Donna Loria, is killed. Her friend, Jody Valenti, survives the attack. The gunman disappears into the darkness. Police arrive quickly, At the time, detectives believe it may be a random act of violence. There is no clear suspect, no clear motive, and no reason to believe the attack is part of something larger, but they are wrong because the shooter will strike again. Over the next several months, more shootings occur. Queens, Brooklyn, the Bronx. The pattern becomes clearer. Young people, parked cars, late at night, and each time detectives recover the same type of evidence, shell casings. From a 44 caliber revolver, newspapers begin reporting on the case. Headlines appear across the city. The 44 caliber killer. Fear spreads quickly. Couples begin avoiding parked cars. Nightlife begins to change. Rumors spread that the killer may be targeting women with dark hair. Some women even change their hairstyles, but investigators cannot confirm the theory. The killer's identity remains a mystery, and the attacks continue. Then something unexpected happens. A letter arrives, written by the killer. The message eventually becomes public after being shared with journalist Jimmy Breslin. The letter is disturbing, strange, angry. Inside the letter, the writer introduces himself with a new name, the Son of Sam. He writes about violence, about darkness, about voices. The message shocks the city. Now the killer is not just a rumor. He has a name, Son of Sam, and the entire city begins following the case. But the killings are not over. By the summer of 1977, the investigation becomes enormous. Hundreds of detectives are assigned to the case. Thousands of tips arrive from the public. Every lead is investigated, but the killer keeps escaping. Then comes another attack. July 31st, 1977, Brooklyn. A young couple sits inside a parked car. Without warning, gunshots. Another victim dies. Another person survives. But this time, the killer makes a mistake. Something small, something detectives almost miss, a parking ticket issued near the crime scene to a car parked just down the street. The vehicle belongs to a man living in Yonkers, a quiet man, a postal worker. His name is David Berkowitz. And very soon, police will discover something that will shock the entire city. The Son of Sam is closer than anyone ever imagined. The investigation had reached a breaking point. For months, detectives chased shadows, hundreds of leads, thousands of phone calls. Most of them went nowhere. But after the July 31st, 1977 shooting in Brooklyn, something changed. Investigators reviewed every detail again. Witness statements, crime scene photos, police reports. Then they noticed something unusual, a parking ticket. It had been written shortly before the shooting. The ticket was issued to a car parked near the crime scene, a yellow Ford Galaxy. Detectives checked the registration. The vehicle belonged to a man living in Yonkers. His name was David Berkowitz. At first, the name meant nothing, just another resident of New York. But after months without answers, detectives decided to look closer. In early August 1977, investigators began quiet surveillance. They watched Berkowitz's apartment building. They watched his car. They observed his daily routine. To neighbors, nothing seemed unusual. Berkowitz lived quietly. He worked as a postal employee. He kept mostly to himself. But detectives had learned something important, sometimes the most dangerous. Criminals look completely ordinary, and they did not want to make a mistake. So they kept watching, waiting, looking for anything that might connect him to the shootings. Then, early one morning, everything changed. August 10, 1977. Yonkers, New York. Detectives waited outside Berkowitz's apartment building. The early morning air was quiet, streetlights still glowing. Then a man walked toward a parked car. The car matched, the vehicle connected to the parking ticket. The man matched the description witnesses had given. Detectives approached slowly, carefully. They identified themselves. According to investigators, Berkowitz did not resist. He appeared calm, almost relaxed. Within moments, officers placed him under arrest. After nearly a year of fear, the man suspected of being the Son of Sam was finally in police custody. But investigators still needed proof. Police searched Berkowitz's vehicle. Inside the car, they discovered a duffel bag. Inside the bag, a revolver, a 44 caliber handgun, the same type of weapon used in the Son of Sam shootings. Detectives also found ammunition and maps of New York City, some of the locations. On the maps appeared connected to previous crime scenes. For investigators, the evidence was powerful, but the biggest question still remained. Why? Why would someone commit a series of random shootings across an entire city? The answer Berkowitz gave would shock the world. During questioning, David Berkowitz began talking about the crimes. He admitted involvement in the shootings, but when detectives asked about his motive, he gave a strange explanation. Berkowitz claimed he had been receiving orders to kill. According to his statement, those orders came from a neighbor's dog. The dog belonged to a man named Sam Carr. Berkowitz claimed the dog was possessed by a demon, and that demon had commanded him to commit the murders. Investigators were skeptical. Many believed Berkowitz was attempting to confuse the investigation. Years later, Berkowitz himself admitted that the story about the demon dog had been fabricated. But at the time, the claim stunned the public. The mystery surrounding the Son of Sam seemed even darker. Following his arrest, Berkowitz confessed to the shootings. He described approaching parked cars late at night. He described firing suddenly, without warning, without speaking to the victims. The attacks were largely random. The victims had no connection to him. For nearly a year, detectives feared the killings might continue indefinitely. Now, with Berkowitz in custody, the violence had finally stopped. The news spread quickly across New York City, and the reaction was immediate. When police announced the arrest, many people felt relief. For months, the city had lived in fear. People avoided sitting in parked cars. Nightlife had changed. Some women even changed their hairstyles after rumors spread about the killer's targets. Now the man believed responsible was behind bars, but the relief did not erase the tragedy. 6 people had lost their lives. 7 others had survived gunshot wounds. Behind every headline were families forever changed. Parents, friends, brothers, sisters, lives ended suddenly. Lives forever altered. In 1978, David Berkowitz appeared in court. Psychiatrists had evaluated him. They determined he was mentally competent to stand trial. Instead of fighting the charges, Berkowitz pleaded guilty. The courtroom was filled with reporters. The Son of Sam case had captured national attention. When the judge announced the sentence, it was severe. Multiple life sentences, ordered to run consecutively. The decision meant Berkowitz would likely spend the rest of his life in prison. The era of the Son of Sam had finally come to an end. Even after the conviction, the case continued to raise questions. Years later, Berkowitz made claims suggesting other people may have been involved. He hinted at possible cult connections, but investigators were never able to confirm those claims. Most experts continue to believe Berkowitz acted alone. Still, the speculation remains part of the story surrounding the case. The mystery continues to fascinate investigators and historians. Today, David Berkowitz remains imprisoned in New York State. Over the years, he has given interviews and written about his life in prison. He has said that he experienced a religious conversion while incarcerated. He now describes himself as a born-again Christian. Some people believe his claims. Others remain skeptical. For the families of the victims, however, the past cannot be undone. The pain caused by the crimes still exists. Even decades later, the Son of Sam case changed the way police investigated serial crimes. It showed how powerful media coverage could become during an active investigation. For months, the name Son of Sam dominated newspapers and television, but behind the headlines were real people, real lives, real loss. The story remains one of the most disturbing chapters in New York's criminal history, not because of complex criminal networks, not because of elaborate plans, but because the violence seemed so random, so unpredictable. For one terrifying year, an entire city searched for a shadow, until one small clue, a simple parking ticket, helped reveal the truth, and finally ended the nightmare known as the Son of Sam.